Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about Solana because what we're seeing right now on the Solana chart is you basically could be buying 15 Solana right now for the price of 10 just about 6 weeks ago. So obviously a massive change in the value of Solana. I want to talk a little bit about that, discuss why we should not be buying highs and selling lows if that's not as obvious as it sounds, but also how some strategies to do that, how we can think about it, some various things that when we start to see things like this happening, maybe we're feeling a little bit more opportunistic rather than scared. And so anyway, let's go ahead, dive right in. Starting out, let's check out crypto bubbles, because what we can see is it's been a pretty rough day overall. I mean, probably about a 10% average market pullback, again, just on the day. So, a pretty strong pullback in the overall crypto market. We can see some of the ones we like to talk about here. I guess this one's blocked by my camera. We can see ICP here down 7.4%. We can see Stacks 9%. We can see WIF down over 11%, Jasmy 7%, AI16Z 8%, Virtuals almost 10%. So I mean, a lot of things moving down pretty aggressively. We can see Ethereum here down just shy of 8%, Bitcoin down 3%. So everything down in the market, very few things spared. Overall though, if we look at the week and the month, we can see something very similar. Even all of the gains that we were seeing are basically almost erased. We can see XRP still up a little bit on the weekly, FTN, Leo, and BGB, kind of the other two. But other than that, we're seeing probably, a pullback on the order of around 25 to 30% of market average. We can see AI16Z down over 55% in a week. Virtuals 42%, some really strong pullbacks. Again, now if you are bullish fundamentally on how AI agents look, this could be a really good opportunity, right? Because I mean, you're paying less than half for AI16Z than what you would have been over a week ago. So, potentially some opportunities there. Again, if we also look at months, we can see same type of thing. Pretty strong pullback throughout the entire market. We actually have seen virtuals flip from green to red. AI16Z is still green. We can see Move, FTN, XDC, GT, and BGB are kind of the other ones still green. XRP just barely green, as well as SUI. But overall, again, same type of thing. The market down pretty aggressively. Some of these ones that we've been fans of on the channel for a long time, even big ones, we can see Jasmy 32%, ETH 20%. IMX 35%, Bitcoin almost 10%. So some pretty strong moves to the downside. But overall, like I said, I'm not super scared about this. I'm relatively encouraged just because I think this is kind of what we need to see. We've got a couple of things kind of showing what this is looking like and kind of how it's shaping up overall and why this could actually be a good thing for the market. First thing is if we do look at the fear and greed, I've said this for weeks at a time now. We're finally starting to see the possibility that we might get back into neutral. Really good news. As I've kind of said, we've been sitting in greed and extreme greed for probably a month longer than we really probably should have been at this point in time. And so the fact that it's looking possible that we get back into neutral, I think is good. I have said before, I think fear and definitely extreme fear are probably out of the question. Given some of the moves down we are seeing in the market, maybe we kind of creep back into fear. If we do, I would say it's probably just barely. I do think coming back into neutral is kind of a good place of where we should be. Again, time and time again, guys, this stuff is always right. So I know, maybe at the end of December when we were sitting in extreme greed, we were like, oh no, it's still going to go higher. Oh, it's still going to go higher. Oh yeah, we're just getting kicked off, all this type of stuff. This stuff never lies. It is always seeming to be right, which is what's so crazy to me. Also, one thing I did want to point out just real quick is we can see that on the 24-hour liquidation, $729 million liquidated. We can see longs getting absolutely destroyed here. If we look and we actually move this back to 24-hour, we can see 84% long, 85, 81, 82, 83, 99. It's just absolutely insane numbers getting liquidated here. Almost $250 million or over $250 million coming just from Binance. And then OKX and Binance also having 9 figures getting liquidated from them as well. So really huge liquidation going on in the market. As we can see, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and others kind of the two big ones. Obviously, Ethereum and Bitcoin kind of the two main ones. This could be a little bit of market manipulation. We'll talk maybe a little bit about what could be going on here. But overall, this is a Solana video, so I did want to kind of keep a close focus on Solana. We can see longs everywhere getting liquidated. If we do go back and look at the Solana chart, we can see something that's actually pretty good if you've been listening to my previous videos on Solana, is I have talked about this liquidity zone. And what we can see is we're at the very bottom of this liquidity zone, which means this is theoretically, probably a pretty good time to buy based on what we've seen in the past. This has been a really strong support. We've seen kind of a wick down, liquidating a whole ton of longs here. And so now we might start to see a little bit of a bounce to the upside, kind of like what we saw maybe here, potentially in this area as well. I mean, we have seen this before. And so unless we do break this support, which again, we've kind of wicked back up and we are back into this liquidity zone. So unless we break this for good and maybe head down to like the 162 range, we're probably looking decent in terms of where we're sitting. And so that's why I want to talk a little bit about kind of what I started the video with, which is you now essentially can buy 15 Solana for the price of 10 if we were to be buying it back up here at all-time highs. Now, obviously, as we talked about, this was the like later end of November. Everything was euphoric. People were jazzed. New regulations going to be coming to the US. Crypto finally has a direction. It's not dead. We've got an administration that's pro-crypto, Bitcoin reserve, all this, that, and whatever else. Everybody's going nuts about everything, right? And now we're sitting at a point where you could be buying essentially 50% more Solana for the same exact like USD denominational value, and people are afraid. And we're seeing on the chart, we're sitting at the bottom of our liquidity zone. Again, we could always break, we could always go lower. This is a possibility. But this is something that we're always looking at and we've always seen talked about time and time and time again. People are too afraid to buy down here when they could be getting 15 Solana for the same amount of money as if they were buying up here when they're getting 10. But here is when people most likely want to buy. So it's just kind of crazy. You have to, if you want to be profitable in the crypto market, again, this is not financial advice. This is just my opinion, but it's my opinion that if you want to be profitable within the crypto market, you cannot be buying here and you need to be buying here. Now, I know that is scary because here everybody's bullish. Everybody's talking about how much money they're going to make. Everybody's talking about how big or how Solana is going to be going to, $500, $600, $700, $800 per coin. Here everybody's talking about how it's going to zero. Well, usually people are wrong, right? I mean, we did not go straight to $500 a coin from here, and here again, it's crypto. Anything can happen, right? But at this point in time, it's looking very unlikely that Solana is going to be going to zero. If we go back, we probably won't go into DeFi Llama today just to kind of keep things a little bit shorter in terms of video time. But if we were to go back into DeFi Llama, I think we would see a lot of essentially metrics looking very, very similar to what they did here or here. Maybe not here because we did see a pretty decent spike in like chain revenue at this point in time. So maybe it doesn't look exactly similar to what we're seeing here, but I'm pretty confident we'll see it looks pretty similar to what we're seeing at, at these different points. And we're seeing prices up, $220, $50 a coin higher than what we are seeing now. So we can see right now that it does appear that we are seeing a little bit of a bounce. I think it's very likely that we do see a bounce. Again, no guarantees in life, but I do think it's looking likely that we see a bounce here on Solana. If we do look at the RSI, we have creeped down definitely into like the weak territory. We have not hit oversold, but we are definitely sitting in weak territory right now. Not the end of the world. Like I said, this is not anything that means a whole lot to me. But we are seeing that, we're starting to see some weakness overall within the crypto market, but we are hitting these key zones of liquidity where we should expect a bounce. If we don't see a bounce, then we are going to see probably much lower levels. Again, like I was saying, 162. If we fall below the 162 range, maybe we hit kind of this like 147 level. And then from there, maybe the next major level of support is going to be down here at like 127. So, potentially some opportunities for some further pullbacks. But again, this is why you DCA, right? People will ask me in my YouTube comments all the time, what is the best plan? How do you do this? How do you do that? All this, that, and whatever else. And I always tell them, like, if you're going in 100% in, out, whatever, it is really difficult because you're probably going to be wrong, to be completely honest. And if you are, then it's going to lead to FOMO and revenge trading, and it's just not a good idea. And so let's say, if you have 100% of your funds, however much that ends up being, if you want to buy in 30, 40% here, well, then now you've got another 30, 40% here, and then you've got another 20, 30% here if it keeps going down. But if you see a bounce here, well, at least you're in with 30, 40% of your funds, and you caught the bottom, which good for you. But in the event that you don't, you still have more money to DCA if price does continue to go down. Same thing on the way up. If we do look at this, we can see we've had this liquidity zone drawn for a while now. And what happened when we saw price get into this liquidity zone? It got immediately rejected back down. So same type of thing. If you're looking to short-term trade at least, you could have taken a trade here and maybe sold 30 to 40%. And then, if we get up to here, maybe sell a little bit more, maybe sell a little bit more. And maybe if we break and we head to new all-time highs, maybe you only have 20 to 30% of your money left, but you've profited all the way up and kind of expecting, given the market cycle that we're in, you're expecting it to come back down. And again, if it doesn't, obviously, you lose out a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. And so, that's kind of what we're seeing here. Again, looking at the Bollinger Bands kind of before we move on here, we can see we saw price wick outside of the Bollinger Bands. As I talk about, whenever we see price kind of fall outside of the Bollinger Bands, it's very, very likely that we're going to see price climb back in. We've seen price climb back in, at least so far. Potentially we see a further move to the downside, but given all the liquidations that we've seen of longs, I don't really, from like a market maker, lizard people type of perspective, I don't really see a reason as to why we would continue further to the downside, just because we've taken so much liquidity off the table. Right now, I think people are going to be getting bullish. They're probably going to be putting shorts in, probably at like 192. Again, just referring to the Solana chart, you could probably find these levels for every crypto, just because they're moving somewhat similarly. But like, at least for Solana specifically, we're probably going to see shorts pile up around like the 193 range, maybe some more shorts pile up around like the 224. And then again, at this liquidity zone, probably somewhere around the 230 range with, again, like, the most amount of shorts probably being up at recent all-time highs around like 263 to 265 range. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm expecting that we see a move back to the upside, just because we're in a level of like consolidation. We're in a level of kind of just chopping around and liquidating people. Obviously, given the liquidations we've seen here, done a fantastic job liquidating a ton of people here recently. And so now, we'll move back to the upside, liquidate some longs, and then maybe liquidate some shorts, and then maybe we'll come back down. So if you are interested in trading Solana, Bitcoin, Ethereum, anything like that, feel free to use my link in the description below for BTCC. We are still doing that 10% bonus on first-time deposits, which again, really, really good deal if that is something you're interested in. This is in addition to the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So, tons of free money that BTC is willing to throw at you just to come on and start trading on their exchange. Also, they've been around for 13 years, so not really too much of a risk of them being like a here today, gone tomorrow type of exchange. Also, 300 plus crypto futures. So if you have anything that you're wanting to trade, they probably have it. Also 500x leverage. I'd strongly discourage you using this level of leverage, but if for whatever reason you've got a strategy or something that works out using that level of leverage, they do have that option for you. Also, no VPN or KYC necessary. So if that's something that's important to you as well, then they obviously have that. So moving on, I want to take one quick look at the crypto total to market cap. Again, this is the total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin. What we can see is we have fallen out of this wedge, but if we zoom in here and we take a closer look, we can see, at least for right now, we're sitting on the very bottom end of this liquidity zone that I pointed out. We did kind of wick down below it, which again, always a possibility. If we were to draw this being like, most encapsulating as we could, probably down to this level of support here, though, like 1.27 trillion range, is probably the best place that to draw it. But if we are to keep it up here, I do think this is also a possibility. Basically, as I've said, these liquidity zones, kind of clouds, not necessarily lines. And so, maybe we draw it down a little bit here just so we can kind of hit this level of support that we are seeing. We can see with this whole kind of like mass liquidation event, we did breach below this level of support. We very quickly wicked up, and now, the next remaining question remains, well, can we get back into this wedge? So far, we are currently sitting kind of below the wedge. Maybe this wedge turns into something where it's not actually like an ascending wedge. It could be more of just like a, kind of like a flat wedge, and we see some level of essentially it's got like a shallower slope to it. And so potentially, that extends out the time in which this could potentially consolidate. But again, the structure overall by and large is still holding. As I've said, until we see a break below this liquidity zone or above this liquidity zone, no moves in here really matter to me. I think it's pretty clear to say, we can see a move that did not break this liquidity zone, or at least break and hold. We'll always see wicks, going in every which direction, just because people probably have their stop losses set at this range or whatever, right? And so with a wick like this, you get to liquidate all those people that had their stop losses or liquidation points below there. So these rogue wicks can always do anything. But what we can see is, at least so far, we've not broken and held below this liquidity zone, meaning nothing matters, right? We're still going to probably be moving around. We'll probably see a move back to the upside, same type of thing. And so what we've seen, at least in my opinion, exchanges have gotten what they wanted, which is $750 million almost liquidated in 24 hours. Absolutely insane amount of money. So exchanges have gotten what they wanted, at least in my opinion. Now we can start to move around and find where all the other money that is needing to be liquidated sits. Like I said, probably going to be at this range here, maybe up at this range here, and then obviously, at recent highs. Given that this is the total two, obviously people aren't trading the total two, but these are kind of like the general kind of areas that you're going to see similar on all altcoins, and this is kind of where people are probably going to be looking. So anyway, that's kind of what we're seeing here. We do have a lot of news coming up for like US as far as like inflation and Fed and all this other random type of stuff. So that is probably going to play a pretty strong impact on the prices that we're seeing here. I also just want to go over a super quick kind of explanation, at least as to why I think we're seeing some of this price action happening. One, I think we're just seeing a ton of manipulation in the market. And so that is part of why we're seeing some of these moves that are probably scaring people. It's because, again, they're trying to manipulate you into selling your crypto. But secondly is we are seeing a lot of essentially like hawkishness coming from the US Fed. I think people, when we started seeing that like rate cut cycle start, people were expecting, okay, well, rates are just going to go down to 2% or whatever, like we thought it was good, like in the last cycle, and we're going to see this blow off top, liquidity is increasing, all this stuff happening, and now like we're all going to be millionaires, right? Well, now we're starting to see that the Fed is actually like inflation is stickier than what they were expecting. Inflation's coming back. Essentially, like it doesn't really make sense to cut rates to the degree that I think a lot of people were expecting them to be cut based on previous cycles. And so with liquidity and with inflation specifically being stickier than what people were thinking, the Fed has taken a hawkish essentially approach on interest rates, and basically saying like, you guys were expecting 4 or 5 interest rate cuts in 2025. Well, we're thinking like 2 or 3. And so with that, obviously interest rates are going to remain higher for longer, which means liquidity essentially might be like locked up effectively in like T-bills longer than what people might expect otherwise. And so that is why people are essentially getting afraid, and we're seeing some of this sell-off within crypto, is because there's this level of like, oh, well, we may not see liquidity rushing back into crypto like we saw in 2020 or 2021. I still don't think that this changes the long-term outlook of what we are going to see, which is rate cuts, quantitative easing, a lot of this stuff that the Fed has not started doing yet. But we essentially need to see some like more economic data come in. We need to see essentially the economy starts to soften a little bit more before we see that. And so, this is potentially also, we need to keep in mind that the Fed just kind of says what they want and then they do something different because they realize that what they say can impact things just as much as what they do, right? And so since they've said a lot of this stuff, rates have held higher for much longer because people aren't pricing in rate cuts in the future. And so because of that, rates are higher, and they're essentially able to keep a higher interest rate without doing anything to like the actual interest rate. It's just because the market's trying to price in kind of the future like value of what these rates could be. And so that's kind of why the Fed will kind of say one thing and maybe do another, is because they know that what they say can impact the market in very meaningful and tangible ways. So again, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe, because it really, really does help me out. I know this was a bit of a longer video and kind of more market encapsulating rather than just Solana, but I think it's fair to say, that Solana is a small participant in a much larger market, and based on what happens in the larger market, this obviously very, very much impacts Solana, of course. So anyway, hopefully you found the information useful. If you did, like I said, a like and a subscribe really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just feel free to drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those, so if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.